Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting. We only have one item on our agenda tonight. That's 911 dispatch discussions. I'd like to start off by turning it over to Mr. Geraci.
All right. If I could, what we'll do tonight is we'll start out with our speakers. We'll go one by one, and anybody here that has questions, we'll ask them while they're still up there so we're not bouncing between people. And then if we have any additional questions at the end, after everybody goes through, then we'll pull them up one by one, I guess, again, and we'll ask if that's okay. Sound good to everybody? I guess at this time, we'll ask if Lieutenant Rankin would like to speak on this. If not, that's perfectly fine.
Well, I came here tonight to answer the request to have myself being the supervisor over dispatch here to answer your questions. I do not have a prepared speech, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. That's it.
It's fine.
Okay?
I think Chris has a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, let's kind of dive into it and just ask you some questions and kind of get your best, honest answers about dispatch there. So it's kind of been said that, our training isn't on par with HCCC. Our resources to train our operators and that. What is our training program and how does it compare to the counties?
Okay, I don't know what the county does in training, so you'll have to ask them for that. But what I can tell you is that the state of Ohio has mandates on what a dispatch center is required to train on each year. We meet those mandates and are working month over month to improve upon the actual service that the dispatch center provides. We increase our training. We make efforts to reduce the cost of training by training our own instructors in-house. So our lead dispatchers are actually instructors that teach the required courses that the state of Ohio requires. One of them is like an EMD certification. The other is a basic dispatching certification. We teach those in-house. Very much, it's the exact same program that the county and the city teaches, I believe. They both teach APCO programs. We teach it in-house as well, and it's a formatted program, so you teach the same topics.
Yeah. So with the state mandates and standards that you guys got to meet, that's all dispatch centers in Ohio, right?
Yes, all dispatch centers in Ohio, all Psaps in Ohio have to meet the state standards for training and for many other things, but we meet those standards.
Okay. I mean, I got some more questions I can ask if you just rather me just do mine and then we can move on.
That's fine, Mr. Kelch.
So one of our last meetings, Chief McCabe kind of stated that the North Fire Department doesn't have computers in their trucks that can receive incident informations, but could if we switch to the county. Is this something that's true? And if they don't, how easy is that to fix? Is that something we could fix relatively easily, or in your opinion, or?
Well, a few months ago, it was brought to my attention that they wanted to have some direct integration with the current CAD RMS system that we use, CAD system that we use for dispatch. I made those connections between our CAD vendor and the fire department, and my understanding was that everything they needed was met. I don't know whether that's true or not, but we have a new CAD apparently, possibly coming, and that CAD system can be, anything can be integrated with another system. It just takes the effort to do so. I don't think that the CAD vendor that we're potentially moving to or the RMS vendor that we're moving to would have any issues with integrating with the fire department, but that would be a question for the new vendor.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Last one was that I have is our technology. How outdated is our systems? They're made to seem obsolete, Stone Age, just not compatible, pretty much not up to standard. Is that true?
I don't know that anyone has said that our systems are outdated or incompatible. We have state-of-the-art systems. All of our systems have been upgraded over the last few years. Our servers are new. We have redundancies in place to protect our systems if they were to go down. If you remember a while back, a lot of the area departments in our county had an issue where they lost their CAD service for a while. That's because they were using there was a third-party vendor providing some services for the CAD vendor through a cloud network, and we have our own in-house servers. We're protected, we're safe, we have all the redundancies and backups in place. Our 911 system is state-of-the-art. Our mapping system is touchscreen. We can answer 911 calls outside of order. Our systems are as technologically advanced as any system in the county.
And I know when this was talked about on council before, you really advocated for dispatch and really fought for your people there. In your opinion, do you think that our dispatch center is quality? Do you think we're pretty lucky to have something like that?
In my personal opinion, is that Norwood is very unique to have their own dispatch center. The fact that we have a 16-person dispatch center that is directly responsible to and for the citizens of Norwood, I think that is a benefit to the city. I think that to give that up without a great need or a great requirement by the city would be a loss to the citizens of the city.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have right now.
Mr. Tracy.
Could you explain some of the specialty capabilities that dispatch has, such as integrating with the fire department certain responses to certain buildings, and possibly, you can build into our dispatch program certain things the fire department wants, like if there's a hazmat on scene of a commercial structure, or a long lay possibly, if we have a long lay.
One of the benefits I think that we have having our own dispatch center is that in the event that the police or the fire department or city government or the citizens require it, a specialty type of response, we're able to provide that. City of Norwood Dispatch Center is able to provide that. We don't represent many agencies and have to have every agency represented pretty much the same way. We just represent Norwood. So there's the ability to have specific requirements at individual locations, or whether it's individual specific types of incidents, we can have the ability to immediately change how the response is handled based on who wants it. The police department wants us to handle a response a certain way, we can do that. Same with the fire department. If they ask us to do something a certain way, we can do that as well.
Okay. Another question is, let's say some of our ordinances are being tracked, such as a nuisance ordinance, or I know I've heard over the years, how many times have we been to this address? Is that something that the county would track for us, or is that something specifically unique to Norwood so that we can help our officers, our firefighters?
Oh, I don't think that particular question is, the county could do absolutely that as well. Their CAD system has the ability to run a search page on an address and give every run that the county has dispatched to that address, same as us. It's a CAD search program, and I think that the county could probably provide those numbers. If it says go to 123 Main Street and how many times we've been there, they can provide that as well. That's really kind of based on the actual CAD system itself.
And I know last meeting, someone had brought up the fact that we don't have a mapping system.
Well, the mapping system is a requirement under emergency 911 PSAPs. Our mapping system is not only there, but it is brand new. We bought it, I want to say 2019. We have What I like best about what our mapping system is that, say we get a series of 911 calls coming in at the same time. You've got an auto accident on the highway. We've used this analogy before. Auto accident on the highway, cars in flames. You get everybody driving by is dialing 911. So you get this cluster on your map that shows these 911 calls coming in from this one specific part of the highway. And then you get one call that comes from extreme north part of Norwood or another part of Norwood. With our mapping system, we're able to actually answer, not in order, but we're able to just touch the map and see that we can answer the call for a completely different incident. If we're getting every call we answer over and over again is there's a car fire, there's a car fire, there's a car fire. We can jump and answer other calls and put them in front of calls we're already responding to. So our mapping system is not antiquated. It is state of the art.
Okay. And would that mapping system be able to be integrated into, like the fire department, should they have MDCs in the trucks?
But the 911 mapping system is through the 911 program. I don't know of what program the fire department would be choosing for their in-car computers. But the 911 program may or may not, by design, be immediately integratable, but the CAD system would more than likely be integratable. I don't know the exact system they use, but most vendors can write the programs to make all the services integratable.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions for Lieutenant Rankin? Mr. Kelch?
Yes, I have one more just coming off that. So our numbers per dispatcher, we're coming in around 10 to 20,000 dispatch, or 10 to 20,000, one dispatch for every 10 to 20,000, sorry. People and HEC, it looks like kind of around 40 to 50,000 per dispatcher. That, along with this mapping system, do you think that would be kind of easier to manage? And
Okay, so I think what you're saying is the number of 911 calls that come in a calendar year.
Yeah.
We're upwards of 17,000, 18,000 911 calls. And we get a lot of landline calls, non-emergency calls, people who call the regular 4520 number or other numbers and get transferred to us. The 911 are obviously the emergency calls for service, so we want to answer those as quickly as possible. If we had 18,000 911 calls, we have a minimum of 2 dispatchers on working at any 24-hour period, so that's 9,000 calls per dispatcher, if you want to break it down to the minimums.
yeah,
I don't know what the county's minimum number is, but my understanding is their number of 911 calls answered per dispatcher is far greater than ours. They answer well over 400,000 911 calls a year, and so if you did the math, whatever that would be of 9,000 divided into 400,000,
Yeah.
they don't have that many dispatchers working.
yeah. Well, I mean, well, my question is more, and thanks for the clarification there. I kind of was writing pretty fast here. But with that said, with that mapping software, do you think that would be kind of less likely that our dispatchers would end up getting bogged down by kind of like big incidents?
Well, I think everybody remembers the big flood we had.
Yeah,
When everyone called, and we had hundreds of 911 calls, hundreds of landline calls coming in all at the same time over this very short period of time. County had the same number of calls at many different times throughout the years, and 100 calls at the same time. Nobody can answer all those calls, but the mapping system certainly does help that if we get a number of 911 calls, we can kind of decluster some of the calls and be able to answer calls. If someone's calling about the same incident, we can certainly pick up other calls, and it increases our ability to answer, at least get first responses to all the required emergency calls. Maybe not answer all the calls because you just can't answer them all.
yeah.
But you could certainly make sure that you're not answering the same incident over and over and over again.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Lieutenant Rankin? Mr. Vonzo?
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I just want to thank you all for being here, and for everybody else that's here. I apologize, I was a couple minutes late as well. So I actually just sent an email out to everybody on council, plus the mayor, with the communication center cost breakdown that we were given, that's signed by Chief William Kramer and Lieutenant Mark Rankin. This was 2 years ago whenever we were looking at dispatch originally. And I just kind of was hoping, and I can actually provide this to you if you'd like, and I just wanted to know if anything's changed on here from when we were provided this originally. Like if there's situational things that have changed at the county, so obviously some of the county numbers might have changed, but on here it says that we need 3 full-time clerks, 6 part-time clerks. There's an agile network that's a $1,400 cost, and then there's a Marks cost at $70,000. And I was just curious if any of these costs would, originally we thought we might need, maybe not you may not be able to comment on the clerks, but could you comment on the Marks $70,000 cost and the agile $1,400 cost that we'd have to incur if we went with the Hamilton County Center?
I can touch on it, and then
And if you need
I
it,
can provide you with.
There you go.
Okay, so the $70,000 cost, I believe, is our radio network. I believe that's our cost to purchase our consoles. I don't know. I know there's a couple years left, and I don't have the contract in front of me, but I believe there are a couple years left at least on that. I don't know whether those costs would be something we would be able to do away with. Is that what you're asking? If we were to, are those costs that we're continuing today? They are still costs that we're paying today.
Okay, so basically the 70,000, that's what I'm asking. So that I just wanted to make sure that I have all the costs correct. That 70,000 is one that would continue. If for some reason we didn't have somebody else that bought those out from us or other.
Right, if they didn't buy them, there is a couple years, I don't know exactly how many years, it's 2 to 3 years left on that system to finish paying for it. But and that's something I can provide you the contract paperwork on if requested, but.
That's helpful. And then the other one is the Norwood communication cost. So when we looked at this, basically the total operating expenses, we looked at this 2 years ago. We were looking at Norwood, $853,000. Hamilton County, Psap cost was $389 at the time. Now I think we know it's like around $170,000. But the total cost, because of the other things that we would have to incur, or that we would still incur, $986. So $853,000 to $986,000. So I have the budget request for 2021 here for dispatch, and it's 1.2 million. And I was just curious if you could kind of talk about like what changed between the 853, although of course some of it would be like cost, like employee costs went up, but what changed between the 853,000 and the 1.2 million? And in the 1.2 million, is there any one-time expenses here that like we wouldn't incur in the future?
On the $1.2 million budget request that I submitted.
And I can let you see this too if you
I'm full aware of that.
Okay.
There are a lot of items on there that are what we call a wish list. There's items on there that I would like to purchase. Every budget I've submitted in the past has been reviewed, and like the salary. The salary, when I tried to get actual insurance cost numbers from the city, I was told to add about 10% to the salary, and that should cover any changes in our insurance cost. So that's essentially what I did. So the salary is something that we should come well under this year. As far as there's a lot of little incidental costs on there that are in the budget, but are items that would be purchased as needed. Like I think I had $2,400 for some office furniture. We tried to get new chairs for the dispatch center, and a Norwood company was gracious enough to give us some chairs. So that item was not needed. And I think I asked for about $12,000 in training cost, which was considerably well over what I could get by with, for sure. But that money would have come out of the 911 fund that is at each citizen each time. For every 911 phone system or internet system, they pay us a small percentage of a few cents for each of those systems, and that money goes to the county and it's divided up between the PSAPs. So that money was going to be used for a good number of those purchases. But that was a best case scenario. If I had an unlimited budget, that's how much I would love to have had to get the city through all the changes I wanted to do to further improve the center.
Gotcha. Were any of the 911 dispatchers, or any of the personnel costs, were any of that covered under the CARES Act stuff this year? Like, were we able to be reimbursed by any of that, or was that really more like police and fire salaries?
We just recently reduced the dispatch center by one dispatcher, one full-time dispatcher. So we've recalculated the schedule so to make it more efficient. But as far as the CARES Act goes, I do not know. That would be a question for probably someone in the city.
Yeah, no worries. And then the other thing is, do you know about how much we're going to spend on just total dispatch cost this year? Like about, I mean, I can pull up the as of November, but I just didn't know if you knew about where it's probably going to land.
I don't have current figures. The last figures I had was based on a September number, and it was considerably less than what we had anticipated for 2020.
No worries. Okay. I mean, that completes the questions for now, so I appreciate being here.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Mr. Geraci.
I do want to thank Lieutenant Rankin for speaking because, over the last at least 2 meetings, I have said the same thing as far as the 1.2 million is a wish list, a Christmas list almost. And, he knows as well as a lot of people, he can ask for it, they can ask for it, but it doesn't always mean that that's what they get, right?
We'll never get it.
So, yes, he has maybe said 1.2 million, but again, that's not a hard number. Like I've said the last 2 meetings, it's something that we can look at financial-wise through the finance committee and say, if they can get by with 900, if they can get by with 1 mil, we can look at that. We're hung up on this 1.2 mil, and I know one person specifically that seems to be hung up on 1.2 mil. But again, trying to be open-minded with everything, that's one thing we got to look at.
Thank you, Mr. Geraci. Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I mean, I guess I'm the one that's hung up on this 1.2 mil just because, I'm the one, I guess, looking at the budget right now, but it seems to be that a lot of people aren't looking at budget stuff and aren't looking at the cost, and I think that it's an important part of the conversation, even though there are, pretty amazing things that our dispatchers do. There's some good technology that we have, and I fully acknowledge that. Anytime, and I'll just make it just known, anytime I've called our dispatch center for anything, I've always had great service, so I don't think there's any doubt on that. But the costs are real, and we still have to ask questions about them. Lieutenant Rankin, is there any way, could you tell me what, I think we're trying to do our best to fund public safety, and I don't want any department to submit things that aren't truly needed, even though I know all of these could be used. I want to make sure that we're getting our budgets in that are truly needed and we're not, just powdering them, because I feel like we really are. From Mr. DiNardo's standpoint, my standpoint, I want to make sure that our citizens are safe. And I think that we've tried to, at least when we look at the financial recovery plan, we've tried to make sure that if there's something that police and fire need, that we make sure we get it to them. And that's something that I feel like I'm pretty proud of here, at least that we've been able to do these last year and a half, as kind of things have looked a little positive. Could you by chance, if I give you the list here of what was submitted, could you tell me what's the wish list and what's not, just so that we could see what the true number is then?
Well, I would be happy to go through the line item. What I can tell you is that our 2020 number is going to be very close to the 2019 number, maybe lower in some expenditures, and except for salary. So if you see an increase in salary, it's going to be based on whatever contractual requirements the city had to adhere to, or based on the insurance change. The rest of the items, when I submitted that, no one reached out to me and said, hey, what are these items for? I'd be happy to explain each and every item to you.
And just one last thing, I have no doubt that like all of these items probably are things that are truly needed. So I don't want to discount any of these items, frankly, because I feel like these are probably all important things. And likely, almost all of these things that equal to 1.2 million are things probably that the county has. And going on the chair thing, by the way, I will just say that maybe the chairs are actually needed because at the county, when we went, I mean, the chairs that they had were probably the nicest chairs I've ever seen. Like, I mean, they're extremely, these people are sitting for hours and hours and hours on end, and you want them to be comfortable. They have very, very nice chairs. I mean, like, it's probably something that truly is needed for our dispatchers, and so it's great that they were donated. You know, we had some chairs that are donated, but it could be that we need better chairs than what we're given. The other item is that, yeah, I mean, like I said, I just want to make sure that we are, you know, just for all of us, that we're looking at the cost, because I think the cost is important, but I do want to see, like, if there are things on here that aren't needed, I would, if you don't mind following up later, it would be nice to see what some of those items are.
I'm always available. Just let me know.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Mr. Thompson?
This is a question for whoever might have the information, but we're talking about projected 2021 costs, and we're talking about incomplete 2020 costs. Does anybody know what the final 2019 costs for our department was?
I was going to get into that after everybody spoke.
I mean, do you have the number, though?
I have numbers. I've crunched numbers. Hopefully they're better than, hopefully I did a slightly better job than the lieutenant did.
I have no doubt.
I should have called your kids to try and help me crunch them, maybe. I'm just kidding. No, I did go through and I did crunch some numbers as far as financial. I know people wanted to put that on the table on the back burner, which is fine. I was going to save my number stuff until later after we got through everybody.
That's fine. I was just curious, and rather than speculate around what may be spent or what might not be, I just wondered what it actually was for our most complete year today. So, thank you.
If I could just tell you that the cost for 2021 for the dispatch center is not going to be at all significantly different than the cost for 2020, which is likely not significantly higher than the cost for 2019. We may even see some reductions because of the one less dispatcher.
So I do have 2019's numbers here. So total spent, and this is from the expense report current year only. So this is basically 2019 appropriations that were spent in 2019. And you have it if you want to.
No, go for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, it's, yeah. But $957,000 was what was spent in 2019. Again, that's 2019 appropriations. So if there were 2018 appropriations that were spent in 2019, those aren't counted. But, you know, just want to make sure it's out there because you can always, Jim Stiff, everybody can look at them in slightly different ways. So that's how, but it's $957,000.
And that's useful because that is what's
Mr.
that's
Denner.
useful because that's how we compare budget to actual is the way that James described it there.
Oh, but I do see we have the numbers here too, yeah, so, good.
Thank you, gentlemen. Anyone else? Anything else for Lieutenant Rankin? Thank you, Lieutenant Rankin. Next, Mr. Geraci.
Next, we'll ask Mr. Kyle Benton to step up. If you could just explain your roles right now currently.
I'm sorry, explain what?
If you could explain your roles currently.
I am the Local 3278 Union President, and I'm a lead dispatcher on the third shift for the city of Norwood.
Okay. Mr. Couch, would you like to start out?
Yeah, if that's okay with Mr. President.
Mr. Kels?
This is some of the similar questions I had for Mr. Rankin, because I figure, you know, you're the union president, you know, you're right there, first line with your guys there. What would you be able to explain about your training program, maybe that Lieutenant Rankin was not able to touch on?
Like you said, there's a state standard in which we have to train to, that all PSAPs adhere to. Us, Hamilton County and Cincinnati adhere to the same standards. We go through RCIC leads, BCIs training, emergency medical dispatch, public safety training. We go through all the same trainings. We go through the same organization, we have the same emergency medical guide cards, we have the same medical director. Our training ultimately at one point in time was kind of geared and based off of county's training. So as far as training goes, we receive the same levels of training. We have to do the same levels or the same amounts of continuing education per year to uphold those certifications. And like Lieutenant Rankin said, we have now 2 in-house instructors in which we do that. I instruct 2 courses. Our lead dispatcher instructs a course. All of our continuing education is mostly done in-house. And then some of it's done through APCO's organization also to maintain their certifications that we have through them.
So, claims or points being made that our dispatchers aren't trained to the same standards would probably be false?
That's inaccurate, yes. Yeah, they have the exact same standards that we have to meet. Like I said, any Psap in the state of Ohio has to meet those standards.
Yeah.
Each agency, I'm sure, has their own in-house trainings that may differ because they're based towards their own department. I'm sure Cincinnati is doing trainings that we don't do because they're geared towards Cincinnati's policies and procedures. We do trainings that Cincinnati and county aren't going to do because they adhere to our procedures and policies. As far as the state standards go, we all adhere to those. And then anything extra is usually geared towards our own departments that we work with.
Okay. What about our technology that we have? How do you think that kind of stands up with Hamilton County?
I love our technology. Again, I've heard a lot of people complain about our CAD system, but, we've got no issues with our technology. It does well. We have great call processing times and response times, so technology is clearly not an issue for us. It's never been an issue for us.
Are there things that we could be doing more of with our technology that we currently have?
I'm sure there's always something that can be done more with technology, right? It's ever growing. I'm sure there's always new ways to integrate things. Dispatch centers across the state are always looking for ways to integrate technology to give first responders more information and lifetime updates in the field.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that, I don't do the technical side of things, but I'm sure there is a way to improve things constantly. Yeah, sure.
Well, that's it for me for now.
Thank you, Mr. Kels. Mr. Dracy.
Are you able to comment or go a little bit further into the budget aspect of dispatch at all? As far as, we were discussing with Lieutenant Rankin, the 1.2 million versus an $850,000 budget.
A little bit. I don't do the budget side of things a whole lot. We just recently kind of reviewed a little bit of the budget. We were going over the numbers that we'd received from the city just during our union negotiations with the city. Some of the numbers I've seen so far, we've kind of broke it down to, like he said, there's kind of a wish list of things versus that they have in the budget versus what our actual costs were. With the changes in scheduling that we made for 2021 to our staffing and whatnot, we were able to get down what we believe to be the budget about the $850,000 range to $830,000 range. And part of that was including the wireless money that we get. That fluctuates each year by, I'm sure, $10,000, $15,000, depending on the amount of wireless callers that we get. But that was calculating what we know is about an average of our wireless funds. I think it's about $60,000, $70,000 a year, I believe. So, but that, once again, those were the rough estimates that we came up with. But also, I don't do the budget side of things on a regular basis. Those are just a quick glance at some numbers that we came up with.
Okay. Also, as far as staffing, are you familiar, are you able to give us a kind of a roundabout number as to our staffing per resident versus Hamilton County staffing per resident?
If I understand your question correctly, I think like Lieutenant Rankin had said earlier, I don't know what the true amount of population that Hamilton County serves. I believe there is roughly 800 and some odd thousand people in Hamilton County. We have 20,000 of them, roughly so. I think city has in their jurisdiction 300 and something thousand people, so that would leave, I don't know, 400,500 maybe in county jurisdiction, I guess. I think they have anywhere from 6 to 13 or 6 to 10 call takers on, plus another 4 to 5 dispatchers on duty at night, so depending on their shift and their staffing, you're looking at, I don't know, maybe 35 to 50,000 residents per dispatcher roughly. Somebody can double check that math, it's not my strongest suit, but,
I think I came up with somewhere around 45,000
yeah, so somewhere, I guess somewhere in that ballpark.
residents
maybe.
per dispatcher.
Then we would be, like Rankin said, we'd be anywhere about 1 to 2 call takers, probably 9 to 10,000 residents, somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay. Yeah, I came up with somewhere around 9,000 along those lines. And I know we touched a little bit with Lieutenant Rankin on the customizability of the computer system. Is there anything that we are able to do as far as dispatch that kind of goes above and beyond what the county would do for us?
You mean as far as our system software goes?
Yeah, I mean, is there an ability to help our police and fire a little bit more than what the county would do?
I think that we have the ability to personalize the way that we do things to our first responders in a way that county can't, just because, again, like Lieutenant Rankin said, we dispatch for one agency. I don't have to, dispatch for 47 municipalities that all have to agree on the best way to do things. We can customize what we do that, best suits the needs of our police department, our fire department. Everybody wanted to sit down and say, hey, we think this is best, and this is best, and this is best. We can make the change. It's, easy for us to do. So I think in that way, we're different than Hamilton County because like I said, we serve one jurisdiction, I think they have like 47 municipalities. So I think that makes us unique compared to somebody like county.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Mr. Bonds?
Thank you so much. Kyle, I appreciate you being here. I mean, every interaction I've ever had with you has been extremely professional. I know you do a great job for the citizens, so thank you for that. You said that you were a third shift. Are you the most senior person there, or one of the two most senior?
I'm the second most senior dispatcher there currently.
And you work on third shift?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's encouraging. I mean, sounds like in many departments, once people get enough seniority, they end up working the first shift, and then the third shift ends up being the people that have the least amount of experience. So
Yeah.
that's great for our citizens that you're at that shift. Could you explain more about the mapping software, and could you give an example? I mean, if you had to actually use it where a 911 call that came in, they were clustered together, that you skipped one 911 call in order to get one that wasn't in that cluster, which makes perfect sense because a lot of those people are probably calling out the same thing. Have you actually had to do that, where you've skipped a call to answer one that's somewhere else, because of course those calls are very likely the same?
I've personally had a couple. I have been on third shift now for the last about 6 years, so I've been on thirds longer than we've had that new mapping system. So our 911 calls on third shift are obviously lower than that of first shift and second shift. Over those couple of years that we've had that mapping system, I can think of 1 or 2 times maybe where I've had that as where we've had a cluster coming in for one thing and then one random incident coming in at somewhere else at the same time. Is it something that happens every day, all the time? No. Is it something that's nice when it happens? Sure, it's great because, compared to our old mapping software, this new software we have is, I love it because it has some of the options that we just didn't have before. I don't know, what the other counties or other dispatch centers, their mapping software looks like, but we like the software because it has that ability. And so, but yeah, just a couple of times personally, I'm not sure how many times the other dispatchers or anybody else has ever had to use it, but.
Yeah, no, it's encouraging you have the opportunity to, for sure. The other question is, I've seen, I don't know if it was a dispatcher or a spouse of a dispatcher, but I've seen somebody online talk about how it's not easy to figure out if somebody's calling in. The county's told us that they can see, if it's on a cell phone, it usually can pinpoint, basically, they can see almost exactly where they are, or very, very close. But I've heard online, reading just Facebook comments, that potentially that's not the case, or that at least maybe that's not the case. I just didn't know if you could provide some example or some context. Can you all see where people are when they call on a cell phone usually?
Yeah, so ultimately when you call in from a cell phone, you get what's called 2 phases. You get phase 1, which is cell phone carrier information, telephone number, and you get phase 2, and it shows you a location of where it's pinpointing that location of the phone. Sometimes that location is spot accurate. I had a guy call me the other night from a garage behind a house, and as I looked at my mapping system, sure enough, here it was on a structure behind the house, which I can only assume was the garage, but a lot of times it's spot accurate. And then there are other times where it can be off 100 feet, 200 feet. I think FCC rules have to put it in somewhere like 150 feet, like 90% of the time, was I think the goal for GPS and cell phones. I think I know the conversation you're talking about. I think the problem that was made, or the issue that was pointed out, was that if you have a cell phone caller who calls in the mapping system, it pinpoints that phone and it shows that phone being in the middle of the street, then ultimately it can be 4 or 5 houses on this side of the street, 4 or 5 houses on this side of the street. If one of those houses were an apartment building with 2 to 40 units in it, that's another however many residences that. So I think the conversation was based on the idea that we only ask for addresses as a redundancy, and it's not a redundancy. We ask because there's no way for us to verify if that is 90% accurate, and it's right there during that 90%, or is it the 10% inaccuracy? We have no way of knowing for sure so we always ask to verify and clarify.
That's super helpful. So somebody that, I'm not an expert in any of this, I'm not like Mr. Tracy, so that really is helpful. The other question is, so I guess when you have the mapping system, are there times where like somebody can't tell you they don't know the address? And if so, like how do you handle that?
So if they don't know the address, what we do is we send to whatever the mapping system provides us, that address and that location. We will send officers out to that area. And generally what we do is we try to stay on the line with them. We've used all kinds of tricks over the years to find people in certain areas, but we will send people up and down the streets. We will encourage the caller, if they're able to come outside, stand on the sidewalk, flag down the officers when they see them, if they're able to. If they're not able to, I mean, we have resorted to all kinds of tricks to try and narrow down somebody's location. Sometimes it's everything from, running queries on that phone number to see if we've had any previous contact with them in our own CAD system, or even through the criminal database to see if it comes back to a person. And if it does come back to the person, does that person have an address locally nearby where the cell phone ping is coming in? So there's lots of different things that we've done. We can contact cell phone carriers and try to look for subscriber information on the address. They can do a ping on it also, see if their ping comes back with more accuracy. So there's lots of things that we do to try and narrow down a cell phone location in the event that the caller is unable to provide us that information.
No, that makes sense. And then I guess, why do you, Chief McCabe came up here and told us, and this is, I want you to speak, not necessarily as an employee, maybe as your union representative, but Chief McCabe came up here and said, the fire department, we want to go to the county, like that's what we want to do. Why do you think they want to go to the county so much, and is there something we can do to, do you have any recommendations for something we can do?
I wish I had an answer for that. I don't know. Again, everybody has their own opinion, and opinions are always going to be different. Of course, I'm going to be biased, right? I like our dispatch center. I think we have great employees. I know what we do. I see what we do. I don't know what county does. So I know we do a good job. I know that we have amazing response times. I've seen the response times that we have versus some other jurisdictions, and I don't see a reason to change that. I don't see the reason to change something that I don't feel is broken. So, but that's me personally. But then again, everybody has a different opinion, and maybe they see things that I don't see, or vice versa. So, I'm not sure.
Gotcha. And then the next question is: have you had any conversations about like what the county offers when it comes to like benefits, pay, or anything like that? I'm kind of asking more you like as a union rep almost. Versus what's offered here, and has there been any conversations with you or any of your other members about that, about like transferring of seniority or anything like that could move along?
So we have briefly had the discussion. I know roughly what their starting pay is currently. I don't know what their benefits package looks like. I know that the county has come out and said they would be willing to hire some dispatchers in the event that they wanted to go to the county. We've a brief talks with the city so far. We still have more meetings with them. We were looking to see what possibilities would be for us there at the county if dispatchers wanted to go there, but otherwise I don't have all those numbers. I couldn't tell you.
Great. Thank you for answering my question. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Spanzel. Anyone else? Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, I just had a couple quick questions about training.
Yeah.
In general, how many different trainings does a 911 operator need to go through per year?
Per year?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, they have to do 24 hours a minimum to maintain their certifications. That's just to keep their certifications up. Those trainings go over a big variety of topics, everywhere from call processing techniques to just new technologies that are coming out, new best practices. Some of those, we have to do X amount of, certain amount of medical training to keep up our emergency medical dispatch certifications. So it kind of covers a very wide variety of topics. And then again, we create some in-house trainings that we do for our own policies and procedures. Active shooter training for our own policies that we do, or whether it be structure fire training or firefighter mayday trainings or traffic pursuit trainings, things like that that we do in-house that adhere to our own policies.
And are those, I understand, of course, the in-house training or the in-house specific things are done in-house, but for those 24-hour training, is that the kind of thing where those of you who are trained to be trainers do that training?
Yeah, so some of the training, so all of our dispatchers have memberships through APCO. So there is a lot of webinars they can attend. There are other things and tests that APCO put out. And then there are also things that we teach that can go towards those certifications in-house also. So it's kind of a group of different things that we're able to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Anyone else? Mr. Tracy?
Roughly, how much does it cost for a dispatcher to be trained in the CPR?
To train somebody in CPR, we have an in-house CPR instructor. So I think so far he's done that for just the cost of the materials.
Okay,
And at best, maybe an hour or two of overtime.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Benton? Mr. Brady?
Oh, thanks, appreciate that. So I'm trying to remember, when was our Psap, when was our Psap created? What year did we start our Psap? Does anybody got that?
1984 or 5, I believe.
84 or 5? Do we know what our population was at that time? Anybody got that information? I've been trying to find that. Our population at that time, and, I'm just basically, why are we at this point where we're investigating that we have to maybe do away with this department, and I'm just curious on what our population was when it was created, what it is now, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to find out, so.
We may have been somewhere around 35,
35, and now we're what, 19, 20?
20.
So our population is declining. I'm a Norwood resident. I've been here my entire life. I don't want to see this. This is a terrible thing, and my sentiments are with you, and what a great department we have, and an asset that we have. But why are we looking at this, and what's in it? What's going on that we have to look at this? So that's one of the things that I'm trying to figure out here tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Any other questions for Mr. Benton? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Tracy?
I'm going to slaughter his last name, so. The fire union representative, Bobby Schlachter.
Just like the rest of these guys, I'm here at your request, so, I do want to point out before we start that the firefighters union 100% backs and supports our union brothers and sisters in dispatch. It's not about getting rid of union jobs. We don't want to see that at all. It's about our safety. It's about the safety of the citizens of Norwood. It's about the safety of the firefighters, the police officers, any visitors we have here in Norwood, and that's our message. However you guys can provide the safest dispatch, that's what we want. We want our union members to stay aboard if possible. If that's not possible, that's your decision, that's not ours.
Mr. Kels?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Schlachter, do you feel safe personally with our dispatch and the service they provide when you're on the job?
Do
you think that the residents of Norwood are safe?
Obviously, I haven't delved into the research as much as our chiefs have. If there is a better way to do what we do, I'm all for that. If there's a better way for our people to get trained or fully staffed, that's what we need to do. If there's a safer way to do things, then that's what we need to do.
That's all for me.
Mr. Dracy?
Do you know at all if computers for the apparatus have been requested at any point?
I can't answer that, that's not my,
Okay.
Mr. Bonzo?
Thank you. Thank you for being here as well. Have you had any discussions with any of your, any other firefighters outside the city that use Hamilton County Dispatch about what their experience is?
firefighters from different departments?
Yep.
With county dispatch?
Yep.
We do trainings and things on incidents that happen in other cities, other departments and stuff, and so we don't necessarily discuss how things are dispatched outside of the city or in our city, but we listen to tapes and we know how things go sometimes, yes.
Gotcha. And so, I mean, do you see, I mean, just you personally, I agree with you that, well, do you see any advantages personally, like going to the county, or do you think that anything that the county could provide, the Norwood Dispatch, could provide as well?
Me personally, I haven't, like I said before, I don't have all the information. I can't give you an accurate answer on that. I don't want to, give a misinformed answer. I do know that the police chief and the fire chief have done a lot of research on this, and their main concern is for their people, for their guys, for their workers, and I trust what they have to say. Other than that, I can't give you an answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bonzo. Any other questions? Mr. Geraci?
If we were to go to the county, we would be put on an automatic mutual aid dispatch with every county department around us, correct?
I can't answer that, I don't know.
Okay.
That's an administrative question for administration.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, sir.
Next, I guess we'll ask the police union representative to come up. I believe this is going to be Officer Devers? I don't think you've been promoted yet.
Kenneth Stevers, that's correct. I am currently the chair for the Norwood Police Wage and Benefit Committee, and I would like to say that as the chair and a representative of the union, we firmly stand with our local dispatch and believe that they are a huge benefit to the city of Norwood and to the residents of Norwood as well. First, I would like to say thank you for allowing or giving us the invitation to come up here and speak on the matter of the impending closure of Norwood Communication Center. Although we can't even begin to scratch the surface of all the benefits that are provided by our local dispatch, our rank and file police officers appreciate at least being offered a small measure of post-decision input into such a large and permanent change into our daily operations. Norwood local dispatch handles probably 90% compared to 10% of what the fire, all right? They are 90% of the time they are dealing with the police department, 10% of the time they're probably dealing with the fire department and what they need when you compare the run volume. It should first be noted that we are speaking here at the invitation of the council and are not appearing here in defiance of our chief or attempting to invalidate his support for the mayor's decision. We are simply offering a counterpoint to the presentation given by the mayor of his decision, which was exclusively presented by an administrator's perspective. As line level police officers and supervisors, we will see the biggest operational changes when this is instituted. We will try to limit speaking on the issues which affect other departments, as some of them have already been afforded the opportunity to speak, and we won't even presume to know what they know about their profession and how dispatch impacts them. We would like to acknowledge that our department has received more support from this city administration than has been received in the past. The city administration has been wonderful to the police department and to the wage benefit union as well. So we do not want to appear to be in defiance of this decision from the mayor and his administration. As anyone can imagine, the thoughts and reactions of the members of the police union have been varied over the last couple weeks since the decision to close Norwood Communications Center has been made. As with any decision, there are differing opinions on the decision itself and differing opinions on how to process it and how to respond to it. Regardless of one's opinion, at the end of the day, Norwood police officers are losing their coworkers. Though it may sound like giving up, there are really no other way to approach it at this point. At least it doesn't appear to be. We can only offer some perspective and our sincere regret that Norwood Communications Center will be lost. The first thing we'll address will allow us to save some extra words in this statement. Norwood Communications Center is often simply referred to by pretty much everyone in the city as dispatch. We will continue that for most of the statement, but they are far more than simple dispatchers and far more than communicators. Dispatchers perform many functions which affect several city departments. Tax warrants, building department warrants, mayor court warrants, and police warrants are all primarily maintained by dispatch. This does not include the confirmation of warrants, stolen vehicles, property, and missing persons. These entries are reviewed monthly, and so are the warrants to confirm that they are still valid and contain correct information, part of which involves telephone follow-ups with crime victims. There are a couple categories of entries which can wait and can be put off until entered into national, state, and local databases. The ones which should wait are very limited. For example, a stolen vehicle should be entered for the safety of other agencies that would come across it and to increase the likelihood of recovering that vehicle. A domestic violence warrant and other violent offenses should be entered far sooner than the 12 to 60 hours not covered by a proposed police court. Most importantly, the missing person entries we have should be entered as soon as possible and must be entered as soon as possible. We have been told that Hamilton County will assist with some of the more time-sensitive entries when the proposed clerks are not working, which will hopefully help. They also have said they do not want this to be a common occurrence. For those reasons, all officers will need to be trained to perform the entry functions and properly enter and remove items from the system. This will cause officers to be out of service until this is handled. Though other agencies were asked for their input, of these agencies, do they have any experience other than dealing with the control chaos of having 10 to 30 different officers using the same channels? And was it from the perspective of a day-to-day line officers? I think these are questions that should be asked. There are additional functions dispatch serves for our community at large. Though some of the current dispatcher employees may choose to move into 311 positions, 311 should have no part in being a position to deal with situations which may result in the involvement of emergency services. And they certainly shouldn't be in a position where they need to communicate directly with police and fire. That should be placed solely on the communication center. We have been told that rough sketch of 311 plan is that they would not have any involvement or have any radios. We would hope that this would be affirmed and kept in place by our administrators. To not acknowledge the effect this decision has on other city employees would be disingenuous. In recent past, initial exploration of outsourcing and reducing other city departments were met with immediate rebuttal as a safety issue. Now that there is almost certainty of an entire department being eliminated, we have to ask who is next. We have watched in the last couple of meetings, council and city administrators say they should begin looking into other departments as well. What does this mean? This is a troubling statement for all employees of the city. Our department has seen a large number of employees leave due to uncertainty and many other factors in the last few years. That has subsided recently, and some things have appeared to begin to be better. But just as it appears to be getting better, we now tell employees to be cautious. There has been no real substantive plan presented for how things look going forward. Sure, we have been told that they're going to add a second police clerk, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., no weekends. But what about the small details of their duties when they are off, or sick, or on vacation? We worry the police department will be forced to take on these actions or these duties, and this will eliminate an officer from being on the road. Norwood Police Department is great, and a large part of that is because of our dispatchers and the service provided by our dispatch. Thank you.
Mr. Tracy?
Kind of add on to your statement at the end there. I think you would also agree that our police department is great because we don't have to pull our officers off the road to do the details that a clerk or dispatch does currently, correct?
Absolutely.
We're able to keep as many officers on that road as possible, right?
Absolutely. That's a huge benefit.
And that's what keeps a city of 19,000 safe.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Mr. Kelch?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not sure if you can really truly speak for everybody on this, but I know you represent a lot of your officers. Also, to the best of your knowledge, do you personally feel safe with our dispatch, what they provide, and do you think that your fellow officers feel safe as well?
Absolutely. If there is a issue that's brought up versus dispatch, it is handled, it is done. None of the officers, if they spoke up and said anything, have ever said that they feel unsafe with the dispatchers we have and the dispatch system that we have in place.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Tracy?
I will say in the past, when I was running as an officer, I have said, you know, it'd be nice to have Norwood on county so that I could hear them without having to switch over to their channel. However, as a resident, I always looked at that and said, nope, I'm glad they're on their own channel because they don't have to beg and plead for airtime. And I'll tell you what, being on a county channel and trying to get airtime and hearing that, it's annoying.
Anyone else? Thank you, Officer Devers.
Thank you.
Mr. Tracy?
Does anybody else have any questions for anybody that is in the audience?
I have a question for both chiefs. First, I really appreciate you being here today, and I also appreciate everybody else being here today and taking your time out to do this. It's not an easy thing, and we all recognize that. Just want to give you an opportunity, I guess really to respond. We got to hear the administration side as was put out last week, and here we've gotten to hear the sort of union and employee side, and wondering if you're still committed to your decision about moving forward with going to the county in light of hearing what was said this evening.
I'll go first. Yeah, I still support the decision, still committed to going to the county. I respect the union's opinion. I've met with Officer Devers. I know some of those concerns, but I still believe it's the right thing to do.
Thank you.
From the fire department standpoint, it's the same. It's never about the technology in terms of what is in dispatch. It's what the fire department lacks. It's not about the people there. It's the lack of people to provide us with what I determine as a fire chief as a defined need. Like I said before at the last meeting, staff it correctly. That's my problem. As a fire chief and someone who can be held personally liable, it's a huge issue. In terms of the MDCs, our CAD system will not support MDCs for fire. That CAD system is a police CAD. Fire was never consulted on that, so that's an issue. That's a software issue too. It's not an RMS issue. The CAD software needs basically another piece of software to communicate. The mapping software, the technology in that office is fantastic. Never been about that. In terms of Councilman Geraci's question regarding automatic mutual aid, our alarm card remains the same, whether we're on the county or where we're at right now. Does not change. Would you like to rebut that?
I will after Mr. Thompson's finished.
Mr. Thompson.
I had a question, Chief Kramer, just really some clarification for me. When I got on council, I was surprised to learn that our dispatch also handled clerking duties. To me, that didn't feel like something that dispatch should be spending their time doing. And I understood, and when I look at things through the lens of a city who had gone through some really hard financial times, I can understand why at some point dispatching or clerk duties kind of fell on dispatch. But to your knowledge, do other dispatch or PSAPs, I know the county probably doesn't, but other PSAPs in our general area, do they also do clerking duties, or is that something that's really sort of something that we've adopted?
Well, I mean, there's only 3 PSAPs in Hamilton County, us, Hamilton County, and Cincinnati. I don't believe Cincinnati or Hamilton County do that, all the stuff that our dispatchers do, if that's what you're asking.
Good enough. Even outside of Hamilton County,
I don't
to me,
know.
it doesn't seem like a standard practice.
So, by Psap requirement, it's not that they're not allowed, but it has to be a secondary duty. Their primary duty is the dispatching, so.
Okay, and what would other secondary duties, what are some examples of other secondary duties that they could have?
Well, like the entering warrants and stolens and different tasks like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Geraci?
I'll, I guess, go to Chief McCabe first and say, yes, I will refute the fact that the CAD will change and that our mutual aid will go up, because we will be on an automatic mutual aid. At this point, we're not on an automatic mutual aid, just for the fact that we are kind of on our own system at this point. If we go over to the Hamilton County system, we will be put on other people's run cards. We will be put on other communities' dispatch automatically. So, I mean, for instance, if St. Bernard is out an engine for some reason, our engine will be dispatched to St. Bernard because we are the closest to St. Bernard. So, at this point, that's not a guarantee. Maybe it's, right now, currently, it could be Little Miami, or it could be Elmwood, or it could be, who else is close? That's a hard one for St. Bernard. Yeah, I think only those two are really the closest.
One of theirs.
So, I mean, just like an ambulance would be automatically dispatched to St. Bernard, versus now, it's kind of let's go with a county department versus Norwood.
So every department in this county has signed what's called a mutual aid pact. Been in place for a number of years. Norwood Fire Department currently sits on approximately 4 alarm cards. Yes, we go to St. Bernard. Yes, we're on Little Miami's alarm card. We are on Elmwood's 3rd alarm. We're on Reading and Sycamore Township's 4th alarm. That doesn't change with our dispatch center. Those are agreements made between the chiefs. That's why it's called mutual aid. We make adjustments as it goes. When Sycamore Township started cross-staffing their ladder truck, we pulled that off our alarm card. We have a very unique situation in Norwood that we're surrounded by Cincinnati. So our first alarm is us in St. Bernard. After that, we get Cincinnati in here. Nothing changes with us migrating in terms of what cards we get put on. That's an agreement that we make with the area fire chiefs.
But that's also an agreement that you could sit there and go, hey, let's move us up on the cards so that we can get more runs, correct?
Are you
I'm just saying that's a possibility that you go in and ask some other chiefs to move up on their cards.
I don't go out and politic for our fire department to make responses in other jurisdictions, if that's what you're insinuating.
I'm not saying politic, I'm just saying, is it a possibility?
Could a person do that? Certainly. Do I do that? Absolutely not.
All right. And then to go back to Mr. Thompson's question, as far as Hamilton County and Cincinnati, they both use central warrants as far as getting warrants in. And then what Cincinnati or the county officer has to do is call central warrants, confirm it through central warrants. Central warrants calls that department, confirms it with them, and then that's...
It's its own department, huh? It's its own department.
Yes. And then if you want records or something from Cincinnati, you call the Cincinnati Records Department. It's a whole mess with Cincinnati and how many departments you got to call. Whereas here, it's a one-stop shop. And as I've said in the past, and, you know, Officer Devers has also wanted to also verified the fact that, you know, our officers are going to have some loads put on them. You know, there may be some nights that we get 3 or 4 officers in there putting warrants in, putting stolen cars in. There's things that we can't hold off on for 12 hours. Am I correct, Chief?
I don't think you're going to get 3 or 4 officers in there. Stolen autos last year, we had about 50, and looking at the times of those, approximately 30 of them would have been times when we had a police clerk here that could do it. Missing persons, don't quote me on exact numbers, like 70, and probably 40 of those were times where we had a police clerk here. So you're not going to get 3 or 4 in there at the same time.
But it's a possibility, right?
Anything's a possibility.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Mr. Thompson? Mr. Braden, you have your hand up, sir?
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, just something real quick here. With Mr. Bonds will help me out here. We were out there, I think we just touched it, but they told us at Hamilton County when we visited that they do take warrants and other types of things. They could set up individually somebody in the back to do that thing. I remember that conversation. Do you remember that? And other than that, a question for the both chiefs. I keep coming back to, we've had this department for roughly 35 years. Our population was roughly 40,000 in 1985. Our population now is half that, 19,000, somewhere around there. Does that have something to do with maybe why we're looking at this? I just keep getting back to, we're half our population, or half our revenue. Is this the reason why we're in this situation, or is this, because we talking to Hamilton County, they say that they can take our 19,000, no problem. This is not going to affect any run times. This is not going to affect anything. We can handle it. Nothing, like it's nothing. So is population the reason why we might be looking at this decreasing?
I'll answer from my perspective, no. I mean, that didn't even factor in.
Okay.
What brought this up was in October, actually, when the previous mayor was here, was when I found out the cost was going from the 16 to the 10 this year and 5 next year. I sent that information to then Mayor Williams, and he said he would pass it on to Mayor Schneider, and then, that is what made this topic revisited again, at least from my perspective. It had nothing to do with the reduction in population.
Can we get our call center to get anywhere close to $5 a call next year? Or?
Say that again?
Can we get our call center to come anywhere close to $5 a call next year, maybe?
No, I don't believe so.
No, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Anyone else? Any other questions for the chiefs? Thank you, Chief McCabe. Thank you, Chief Kramer.
I know Mr. Gabbard just stepped in here. Do you have any questions for?
Not at this point. I'm just trying to get caught up. I apologize for being late. I had to work.
We've had fire union, police union, dispatch union, and Lieutenant Rankin up here. Do you have any questions for any of them?
No, not at this point.
Okay. I guess at this point, we are concluded with the people who we're going to listen to tonight, and I guess if you don't mind, we can talk amongst ourselves regarding it. Anybody that wishes to stay can stay. but I know I have a few pieces of paper in front of me. I know I've handed out at least one piece of paper. And the first piece of paper that I'd like to go over is our mutual aid around us, okay? So this is basically fire mutual aid. This would be ambulance, fire, and any other service that we're needing through a fire department, okay? And that's mainly because police officers are always on the road. They're always out somewhere. They're always close at some point. Police officers can ask for help at any point in time. The reason I did this is because these are based out of firehouses and fire stations. I pulled up 10 that are close. Due to the amount of paper space I had, I could only put the station numbers, and I can give those to you as far as whether they're Cincinnati or county as I go down the list here. So engine 8, which is at on the north end of Montgomery and Pleasant Ridge, that's Cincinnati, would have an average response time of 8 minutes, okay? Currently, our fire department would have an average response time anywhere in the city somewhere around 3 minutes, based on mileage. The next one would be Station 31. Station 31, oh, I'm sorry, Engine 8 only houses an engine.
Just before you go further, to clarify, you're saying that these numbers are important because our fire department could be out somewhere else.
Correct.
So this is the response time for help if our department is
Correct.
otherwise.
So these, if our department is out, or even on some, 2 or 3 runs in the city of Norwood, and we're looking at going to mutual aid as far as the county is concerned, this is what the county would bring up as far as the closest to us, okay? So you've got Station 8, which only houses an engine. And then Station 31 would be, I guess, close to next, which would be a 9-minute response, and that would be coming from Marburg Avenue, which is over by 31's. I believe that's over by Courtesy Chevrolet or whatever they are now, that area of Oakley. So that you're looking at an average response of 9 minutes. Now I've broken it down to north, south, east, and west, and central, just because I was being overly cautious. The next one would be Cincinnati 32, which is on Forest Avenue. Forest Avenue would be over on by the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. I think it's like 3/4 of a mile from there. And you're looking at that one as an average response somewhere around 9 minutes. Station 32 houses an engine, ladder, a foam truck, an ALS, MCU unit, and a tanker, which I don't know that they ever use the tanker.
Councilman Tracy?
Yes.
I had a quick question, and I totally cool continuing. It's just to help me frame. So far, I haven't really made the connection of like what I'm really looking at, and I think what you're trying to say, and I want you to correct me, is that these numbers, and we have NS, we have the cardinal directions, so presumably a central point, that if we were go to the county, I'd have to care about this.
Correct. You'd have to care about if we were getting mutual aid in,
Yeah.
how long it would take to get that mutual aid in.
But it's difficult for me because we just heard the chief, you asked that, and maybe I'm just misinterpreting mutual aid. And I really want, between the two of you, to figure this out for me, because I think that I can care about this, but what I'm hearing is I'm either already dealing with this, or it won't happen with any more probability than it's happening today. And so if there's no change, I'm trying to understand why 8, 9, 7, 12 matters.
Because there will be a change come to Hamilton County. And now I respect Chief McCabe. However, he still is looking at selling the idea of getting rid of dispatch, okay? I'm looking at the idea of trying to help our dispatch out and put out some facts that could be a possibility. You have to look at if our fire department is in Gulf Manor, if our fire department is in St. Bernard. You know, we've got these mutual aid companies that are coming in. He even said we would have Cincinnati come in if St. Bernard's not there. You know, so I provided some of the Cincinnati houses and where they're located and tried to get the closest ones to us. That's not saying that Engine 9's going to have all their equipment in there, or Station 9's not going to have all their equipment in there, and they're going to have to move on to the next station. You know, you could see somebody from Price Hill from Cincinnati. Not saying that if our squad comes back in service, that they don't have to cancel them out.
For someone like me who doesn't have the background that the three of you guys have, what if you could give me one sentence, like the kindergarten version of what about Chief McCabe's statement was false? What was the thing he said that's wrong?
The fact that he is unaware of exactly when a mutual aid would occur.
That doesn't help me, but I'm not blaming you for that. I just don't know what the...
And that's because it's complicated when you look at mutual aid, okay? Mutual aid has changed over the years. At one point, around 2010, they were literally going off of a card, and every department would get, all the chiefs would get together and go, okay, I'll be on your first alarm, I'll be on your second alarm, I'll be on your third alarm. And then you had departments, let's say like, Lincoln Heights didn't like Glendale, so they dropped Glendale down to their fifth alarm just because they didn't like them. Or Glendale knew that there were no firefighters available at Lincoln Heights, so they dropped them down to their fifth alarm. At that time, that was a possibility. However, now, what the county does is that they automatically throw in departments when that run card doesn't have the available units. So let's say the first alarm is Norwood, St. Bernard, Little Miami, and Engine 9. Okay, that's the first alarm. And I think our first alarm is actually us in St. Bernard. Yep, correct. Okay, so it's us in St. Bernard. So let's say St. Bernard's out. I believe our next one is Little Miami. Oh, okay. What's our next one?
We don't have a response. We do it past St. Bernard.
Okay. So at that point, if we don't have anybody back past there, then it would revert to the next station. And what the county would do is take those stations that are closest to the incident. So they'll take, let's say there's an incident at City Hall. They'll take the closest one, which would, I believe, be Station 9 probably. Even over, they may go with Gulf Manor since Gulf Manor's a county, but if Gulf Manor's unavailable, Little Miami. Then they'll go with Station 9, okay? But then if Station 9's not available, the county will call the city, say, hey, we've got an incident here in the city of Norwood. What do you got available?
That's actually not true, Mr. Tracy. The county has a automatic CAD-to-CAD system, so it'll be a massive upgrade for mutual aid with the county because they will actually have a button they can use to send dispatch directly to the city.
No, that's incorrect.
They showed me the button.
They showed you the button, that's correct, but they don't use that button. The problem is that Cincinnati and Hamilton County do have the same systems. They never talk to each other.
When is the last time you've been to the Hamilton County Communications Center, Mr. Tracy?
Oh, let's see. 7 months ago.
Yeah,
So in 7 months, you're telling me they changed their policy?
I think you should go out there. I think that there's only been 2 council members that have actually gone out and visited it so far. I think all 7
And
of
I've
us.
dealt with them for 20 years.
I think you should go out there and get an actual
And I've dealt
tour,
with
not
them.
as a police officer, but as a decision.
I'm trying to give you here facts, okay? I've got straight up numbers and facts that are just being tossed out the window.
You literally said the chief is unaware when a mutual aid would occur. I mean, that's a pretty damning statement to our fire chief that's got over 20 years of experience, that he's actually unaware of when mutual aid would occur.
And I've got over 20 years as well.
How many years do you have experience do you
Okay.
have as a firefighter?
All right. 10 years.
Yeah, I'm the one who started that, and so he can continue, and
No,
I did
that's
say
fine.
you should go.
I've given-
I just didn't understand.
I've given you guys
What
what
the difference
the dire consequences are, okay? Now, our dire consequences, if we have to go with Deer Park Silverton, you're looking at 15 minutes.
But we won't ever have to, like, that will be the very, very last thing, because the second tier after St. Bernard is Cincinnati. And the great thing that you showed us here is St. Bernard is the 4200 Vine Street, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you've actually showed us that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there are 7 other fire stations that have a closer average response time than the St. Bernard one. So the St. Bernard one, that's our first one, and we accept that that's a good enough mutual aid. The next tier includes, there's 7 other stations. Now, I don't know if they actually pull from all 7. I mean, I'm sure they don't. I'm sure there's like 1 or 2 or 3 that would get pulled from. But either way, you showed us that there are lots of other options out there. So, I mean, I guess I still don't understand the point, because the fire chief said, again, that the alarm card doesn't change. It doesn't change. So it seems to be, it's almost fear-mongering if you're going to continue with this, because the fire chief has already said the mutual aid stays the same. It actually gets quicker because we don't have to call the Hamilton County Communications Center. They're literally on the radio requesting.
But if the county departments that are close to us are not in service for some reason, then they go to Cincinnati, which means they have to call Cincinnati. I can tell you how many times I've listened to them say, hold on, let me call over to Cincinnati real quick. Because those dispatchers don't just press a button and integrate with Cincinnati. They don't.
Okay.
It just doesn't happen.
Well, let's just put that on the to-do list to get a question answered on that, because I think that would be good to hear.
I'm curious to know, because you went on tour, I got invited to the tour to the Hamilton County Communications Center. Have you been to our dispatch center?
I have. I toured it the last time when we did the
When was that?
discussion. But we did it 2 years ago.
So 2 years ago you went, but you're saying Mr. Dracy should go see this Hamilton County Communications Center, and you're all of a sudden like all...
Mr. Dracy is the one that's throwing out completely contradicting.
Just because I watched Bloodsport the other day doesn't make me John-Claude Van Damme. I mean, that's just kind of facetious to say now you're such an expert about that. I mean, he's got numbers here. Just let him read the paper, and then we can kind of discuss it. I mean, instead of trying to preach to him about he should go see ACC when you haven't been in ours for 2 years. That's just my perspective.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's a valid opinion, valid point on your part.
Thank you.
I'll be looking forward to you going to see the Hamilton County Center as well. So it's great.
Yeah.
I'll go see ours. You go see the Hamilton County. Let's go ahead and make
Yeah,
that
we carpool if you
the
want.
to-do list.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Dracy, please continue.
All right, so to add to these average run times, you're going to have to add under NFPA 1710 5.2.4.11 that states a fire department suppression resource shall be deployed to provide for an arrival of an engine company within 240 seconds. That's 4 minutes, within 90% of their incidents. Currently, we do 3 minutes. There's not one runtime on this other than ours that meets that 4 minutes. I'll be honest, I don't know of one department that's going to meet the 4 minutes, just because if an engine's going out, you have to look at donning the equipment. Donning the equipment's about 80 or so seconds. And then you're looking at a 10-second answer time for calls and a 20-second call process time over to the fire department. So you're looking at an additional 2 minutes on response time. So if you add an additional 2 minutes of response time to the back of those averages, that's your true number you're going to get. So if we look at Deer Park Silverton, for instance, a 15-minute response right now, let's add 2 minutes to that, you're looking at 17 minutes. I'm not going to go into this much in detail. I was going to go into it line for line so that the residents could hear it. However, I guess this is considered fear-mongering from one councilman, which is fine. If you have specific questions, I'll attempt to answer them based on this.
Mr. Kelch?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to thank Mr. Dracy for trying to put something together. We're not really being given too much information here, and, you know, we're trying to conservatively and safely estimate a lot of these things, and within reasonable degrees of variance, but, you know, I don't personally have, and I'm not from the school of thought that the mutual aid stuff is that important for our dispatch. Obviously, Mr. Tracy has more experience than me. The chiefs do, both in police and fire, and I'm not gonna tell them how to do their job necessarily, but, you know, I just wanted to thank him for putting this together and trying to explain this to us. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kelch. Any other questions about this document? Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, I echo, I mean, I realize there's a lot of work that you put in on this. What this represents, though, is a worst-case scenario where we don't have any available engines within the city of Norwood. I have a question to the fire chief about this. This is just a general answer the best as you can, Chief McCabe, but how many times in the last year have all of our engines been on a mutual aid call at one time?
0.
How many times in the last 2 years?
0.
In the last 5 years?
0.
So, just speaking of realities, all of these would be support coming to help, even if one or one engine, one ambulance, whatever was out on a mutual aid call, we would still have some kind of engine or presence here in Norwood at all times?
The current fire department policy is we send 1 unit out of town on mutual aid, and we retain the rest in town because we have a fundamental responsibility for fire and EMS here in the city of Norwood.
Okay, so would then these become still valuable numbers? It's how much time it takes to receive mutual aid from these other municipalities, which is still good to know because I know that we often receive aid from other municipalities. But the premise here that a worst-case scenario of having to wait, what's the shortest is 3, but, you know, like somewhere in the middle, 10 minutes. In the last 5 years, the worst-case scenario hasn't actually happened. So this is super informative, and I know that it took a lot of work to put together, but its relevance diminishes when you look at the fact that we don't ever have all of our units out of the city at one time. Now, I could see a situation where you've got 1 unit out on mutual aid, you've got the rest of the units out in the city at another call, and then you've got another call come in. I mean, that could happen. That is kind of a roundabout worst-case scenario. But that's when we would normally rely on this list to come help us anyway. That's just my perspective on it. It's like, it's describing, I think this is why Mr. Bonsall said it was fear-mongering, but I don't think that was your intent. But it's describing a worst-case scenario that statistically probably won't happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief McCabe. Any other comments about Mr. Bunzel?
Yeah, I have a question for Chief McCabe as well. We're going to get your steps in, Chief. Sorry about that. So, you know, we've got, I mean, I will say, I mean, I do agree with Mr. Thompson. This is like helpful information. I don't know exactly how accurate the times are for firefighters versus I don't know if this is Google Maps, but can you, I mean, what changes with like mutual aid? And I still don't understand why all this is relevant. What is changing when we go to the, if we went to the county, what would change when it comes to mutual aid?
Our requests would be filled a lot sooner. It'd be immediate instead of having to have our Psap contact another Psap, whether it be phone or Psap to Psap via console. That's regardless if they call the county or they call the city. In terms of mutual aid, the fire chief holds jurisdiction. So I get to set that up and say, yes, we will do that, or no, we won't. Our officers have the ability to say, we don't have the capacity to provide mutual aid. Mutual aid is mutual. You know, if we have a city that's abusing our units, like Cincinnati was calling our ambulances a fair amount, just for a brief amount of time, and we had to have a conversation like, hey, we will help you out, absolutely, but let's make sure those calls are appropriate. Not sending our medic unit down for an ELS call. And we wouldn't do that to them either. Our units, all of our engines are set up to be paramedic units. We'll respond to quantify that run. If it is truly a non-emergent EMS run, we'll sit on that and then we'll transport when we have a unit available. So, you know, in terms of us being exposed by any, that's false. That's an absolute falsehood. The fact is, we will set our alarm card. We've already have an alarm card, essentially, that will just migrate to the county should that decision happen. EMS, faster. Fire, mutual aid for fire, faster. The councilman is correct in terms of if we have an alarm card established and that unit is unavailable, then they will fill that. So say I want to have a third ladder truck on the scene, and what we have spec'd out for our third ladder truck is unavailable, they will pick the next closest unit. That's off of what we select. The times that we have, I mean, Norwood Fire Department in 2020 has provided mutual aid 26 times. We received it 23. That's varying from fires or for EMS responses. That won't change.
So essentially, we've provided more than we've gotten.
By a couple. That would be mutual, pretty much. And I would say that what we received on the Silver Street fire was way above what we'd be able to provide Cincinnati.
Mr. Gabbard?
You just mentioned this Silver Street. Am I not correct? The only reason we had Cincinnati there is because they were at Kroger's getting groceries and they saw the fire before anybody even called it in. Was the report that I got on scene from those guys is they were at Kroger and they saw the smoke and started headed thinking it was probably in their district, but in fact it was on Silver Street. And
that's true.
Yeah. So what's the chances of Cincinnati using us for mutual aid versus us using them? I mean, from my experience and from my knowledge, if Cincinnati had a structure fire, they'll call their own units from other parts of the city to come as their second alarm before they would call us. It's kind of, I think it's a pride thing for them, but what I guess my question is, we would use them for mutual aid a whole lot more than they will use us.
In terms of fire response?
Yes.
Absolutely correct. The reason they don't call Norwood is Norwood does not staff their fire trucks to the NFPA requirements. Now, they do mutual aid with Anderson Township because Engine 7 in Mount Lookout,
Right.
Engine Ladder 18, they're kind of out there.
Yeah.
Engine 51 in Sailor Park, they're out there.
Yeah.
So they get,
they're an island.
yeah, so those outlying will get them just because absolute necessity. But if you look at the concentration of firehouses in the core of Hamilton County, there's a lot.
Just as a follow-up, I don't think that we're going to be responding, our folks are going to be responding to anything close. I think our mutual aid is going to be mostly St. Bernard, maybe Elmwood Place, because that's still kind of part-time, very part-time. They hardly ever have manpower. Maybe Gulf Manor with the Little Miami or something like that, relatively close ones, but it's not going to be that much. Police, on the other hand, total different story. I think that there'll be a lot more mutual aid back and forth on the police side of this than we would ever see on the fire side. I mean, I coming in late today, and again, I apologize for that. I'm still not in favor of switching. Personally, I just think that there's a lot to be said about having our own service. There's a fine line between cost and service, but that's just where I'm at right now. I still think that there's a lot to be said for what our dispatch has. Our particular system is, the same system county uses. We have the same equipment, we have the same data, we've upgraded, we spent lots and lots of money in the last 2 years because they didn't do this 2 years ago and kicked the can down the road. But that's just kind of where I'm at. This is not a personal thing for me. I just think that there's something to be said about having our own service.
Thank you, Mr. Gabbard. Anyone else? Ms. Bonzel?
Yeah, I just wanted to just quickly reply to the kick the can down the road comment, because there was a different mayoral administration at that point, Mr. Gabbard. And we literally were given numbers, and I got numbers here from Lieutenant Rankin and Chief Kramer. I mean, we did as much research as we really could, and we were given autonomy to do. And essentially, the numbers, the city administration wasn't budging. So we tried to do some research. It wasn't the same mayoral administration. There wasn't the same support. And honestly, we're getting slightly different answers from, or at least things have changed from when we had the last time. So I actually think we did quite a bit of research 2 years ago. I think just the numbers have changed and how many clerks they're wanting on at all times, and the cost that the county is willing to do it for, which is $5 now, not $15. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonzel. Mr. Braden?
Thank you. I've been around a long time. I keep going back to Mr. Stith and his statement. I wish he was here tonight, but you remember him. He was talking about how sitting in these meetings, and I know Mr. Gabbard, you've been around long enough to know this, and a couple others. We've been in meetings where we have not had the money for payroll. And I can remember Jim just telling us that the other day, and we're at this time, we're in fiscal emergency, and we're looking at our financial, and I know it ain't all about the finances, but we're going from $19 to $5. That's substantial, and we've been in fiscal emergency now for a couple years, and we've done this in the past recent history. I know this is at least the second time that we've been in fiscal emergency. Is it maybe 3 times? But so in my memory, we keep doing the same thing, and I don't want no Norwoodian would like to do this, but in my memory, we keep doing the same thing. So at all costs is what I keep coming back to. I don't know that's responsible of us. So my question to you, Mr. McCabe, if we do switch to Hamilton County, do you think your response times will change?
I do, and I think our response times will improve.
You think that will improve?
I do.
Wow, that's very enlightening. So, because what I'm hearing is if this happens, they will go up and it will cost people's lives because you will not be able to respond as quickly.
So I think that this is an emotional issue for people. I think when you're clear and you look at the facts, you look at the call answering times, the way the county is set up in terms of dispatching runs, they're not relying on a human person to key a mic to speak out to say this is where you're going. It's done. It's automatic. The radio operator keys it, sees the run, qualifies the responses that are appropriate, kicks it in the queue, and it goes out. In today's technology, it's instant. I stand here and sometimes scratch my head and going, I don't know where these comments are coming from. We're seeing commentary from, people who are invested in this, and I understand that. But the technology has changed dramatically just in the last 12 years. We're talking about 2 different radio system changeovers. It's immense. One of the things I spoke to last meeting was the sheer cost of technology for the city. Yeah. We don't have an IT department here. We have a wonderful person who does his best getting IT stuff done. It's a tier 1. We have to contract that out, and then depending on what their availability is, that's a big deal. When we lost phones, it took a long time for that to occur. That shouldn't happen. That's an unfortunate reality. When you're talking about technology, which is ever changing and will only continue to, it takes a lot to stay ahead of the curve.
Can I ask Mr. Kramer the same question? Do you if we do decide and this happens, do you project your response times to go up?
No, I think for us, our response times will stay the same. I mean, our response times are the county's call processing times are roughly the same as ours. Okay. So it's going to be no different for us. We're going to respond in the same amount of time. I don't think it'll be quicker. I don't think it'll be slower.
I just know I've been around long enough, Mr. Gabbard, you know, my sentiments are with you. I don't like this at all, but we've both been around long enough and seen that we've not been able to make payroll, and we keep doing the same thing, but when do we, and I keep going back to what Mr. Thompson's, I've heard Mr. Thompson say in a previous, you know, years ago, he said that our unions have negotiated so well that they've negotiated some out of a job. So this is something that's touchy. No one wants this. I don't want this. As a long Norwood, you know, someone who loves Norwood, I don't want this, but at what point do we look at ourselves and say we're doing the same thing over and over again? We keep sliding back into fiscal emergency. When do we talk about the money? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Mr. Kelch.
I think, Mr. President, I mean, that was pretty enlightening. I was not aware that we were close to not making payroll, because when we talked about this was kind of a funded thing that we already had. I'm gonna have some questions for you gentlemen in a minute. This is kind of a funded thing that we had. It doesn't affect our FRP status, getting out of it or whatever. I mean, so that was pretty enlightening to me, because I was unaware of that. I know we've had some struggles in the past, but I think we're in a better place now. Technology, that's something that will rise for the city of Norwood. You're absolutely right. I do have kind of a little bit of a background in technology, but, you know, I fear that I'm an old man now, and it's kind of passed me by. But does the county's technology not age? Does that not need updated? I mean, they obviously have such a bigger system than we do. That seems like it would be a lot more money there. So that's something I think that could reasonably lead one to believe that this great cost per run model that we're currently going to see is probably not going to be a longevity item. I think it would be safe to say maybe that their employees are going to receive some pay raises, and there's probably some benefit deals there. So, I mean, that's probably another item I think that would maybe say that $5 a run isn't going to be a longevity item. And I don't know if Mr. Benton here, I mean, do we have those computers in the trucks that can do that instantaneous thing with the monotone dry eyes voice?
You talking about for the fire department?
Yeah.
The police department, they have computers inside their cars. They receive their incidents over the computers first and over the voice. The fire department does not currently have the technology that the chief is talking about. They don't have they use an app in their phone to get some information.
Yeah.
They don't have the computers in their car.
Do we have price points on how much that costs to outfit our units with that? What's that?
So mounting for MDCs, I think the capital budget for next year was calling for, and I'm going off memory, and I'll provide you, I believe the total capital outlay was around $50,000 total.
So is that something that's very necessary today right now to have, or is that kind of more of a wish list item? The job gets done at a very quality rate now, I believe, that we've kind of heard from everybody on most accounts. Is that something that we're not hearing? Because I think the mayor even said himself that he's not been really notified of any problems with dispatch. There's no issues with dispatch. I mean, I was kind of unaware that we had that issue.
I think it's a fundamental issue when every fire department in this region that has a run volume that Norwood doesn't have that capability. I got to rely on whatever notes have gone into the Active 911 app, which was a workaround we did just to have something. The dispatchers do a great job, but we're relying on them to process all that information, talk on the radio, talk on the phone, everything else going on in that office.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely, it is. It's a fundamental issue in terms of why shouldn't our fire trucks have the hydrant locations right in front of them when they're pulling up on a run?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It'd be great. It'd be nice. I would love to have a brand new iPhone, but I can't afford it, so I use my Note 8 that I have.
So it's not about affordability, it's about lack of planning. It's about lack of involvement from the fire department perspective and the way dispatch has been operated in the last 50 years.
Well, did you speak up and say these concerns of the past?
I did. Mr. Bonzo was in many meetings where I spoke vehemently against pouring any additional money into that strictly because of the safety issues of fire department sees. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I mean, and I'm very apologetic that he didn't hear of you. I disagree with his stance there about getting you guys this technology.
Point of
Where I'm
order,
coming from is,
it wasn't my
I'm
decision,
not finished
Mr.
yet.
Couch, so
Thank you. Where I'm coming from is I would like just like you, this dispatch to be very well funded, very well trained. It seems like they're there, training-wise. It seems like maybe there is technology that we should look into if we can afford it. Just because it's there, if it's not mandated, this is the standard, it doesn't mean we have to have it. It seems to me that our dispatch does quite well as is, and what I'm trying to figure out why your response times would be just so much quicker, because the numbers we're looking at is, I think it's 45,000 residents per dispatcher in Hamilton County, about 10 to 20 per dispatcher in Norwood. I don't understand if that's the speed, if they're just that much faster, if that little monotone voice in that split second pops up on the screen is just that much faster that it gets you there. It shrinks Norwood to where we just get there even fast. I just don't see it. The police seem to think that their call times are going to be very similar to what they are now. I think that's more of a fair assessment, even with updated technology. But, you know, I do appreciate your insight. You are the chief. You have been in charge of looking at these technology items for years. But I just don't see where you can make a claim like that based on, you know, just that little piece of technology when they have a larger resident to dispatch ratio. We have technology that competes, just not the technology you want.
No.
And it seems like Chief Kramer is, you know, less adamant about this than you. Maybe you're just the chief fighting for it, or the chief fighter for it, not your position. But it's my understanding that probably 80% or more of our runs are through police. So if
Are we talking incident details or actual?
call runs, I don't know, I'm not a dispatcher. I'm a council member that's here.
You're asking me about.
I'm a council member that's here at a
percentages,
meeting
that's why I was
talking about this, and I'm getting to a point, if I can continue, is have we looked into fire department going to county, the police, which the police officers, the boots on the ground guys seem to really love and enjoy. Have we looked at that? How much would that save? Has that been talked about? Do we have a price point on what that would possibly save a year? I can do it. What was the cost per run you said last meeting? $42?
It will cost you more money.
$42 cost per run? How many
It'll cost
runs do you guys
additional
service a year?
money.
12,000? I'm just asking. I want to know.
I'm answering it. It'll cost you additional money because you're not fundamentally changing the way dispatch is staffed or provided. So what you're going to do is you're going to have.
So hold on, let's just.
Let me finish.
Mr. Kelch, excuse me just a second. Let's calm down. Let's be
I'm
respectful.
just asking for numbers. Nobody's giving me any damn numbers.
You're not letting him answer, though.
Well, let's,
I'm asking
this
for
is a
numbers. 40 calls
discussion.
run. How many runs a year? Fire. Please.
Mr.
sir.
Kelch, this is just a discussion. I know
I'm
there's a
trying
lot
to
of
have
emotion
that.
here.
I keep getting
Let's calm
interrupted by
down.
him.
There's no
I just wonder
personalities
how many
here.
calls per, how many runs a year did fire?
Approximately, the fire department makes 4,500 runs a year.
Okay, thank you. Sorry if I was disrespectful to you.
Yeah, you were.
Is there anything else on this document we can move? I think we have one more document that Mr. Geraci wanted to share.
That's $189,000 that the city would not be spending at $42 a call, which
It's
you said-
actually, Councilman Kelch, it's going to raise our cost per run.
How? That's something I would really like to know. I'm not trying to be facetious, I would like to know that.
Because we're going to be, we can't reduce any of our cost on dispatch side by having the fire go there. Nothing will be reduced.
So all
So
you're
we're going to be
doing,
dispatching less runs. Our cost per run is going to go up. Am I looking at that right?
Correct. You also have a delay in terms of service. Our 911 center will still be answering calls from the community for fire and EMS, and then we'll have to transfer those to the county. Now you're increasing that time.
I mean, I don't understand that one, I guess, because that to me seems almost like 2,200 calls less per dispatcher per year.
So in terms of cost, our cost basis is really loosely based off of the number of actual, when I gave you those numbers on Monday, that was a metric utilized by the number of incidents the police department and fire department will be charged per run by the county, which equaled out to what's called roughly $120,000 annually for the Hamilton County to dispatch us. If you just migrate the fire department across to the county, the dispatch does not change fundamentally. They're still going to have 2 people there taking phone calls. They're still going to have that number of costs in terms of maintaining the marked system consoles. You're still going to have the agile network connectability. You might be able to shave a little bit off, but fundamentally, you're not saving anything by doing that. The unfortunate reality is, and it's not really, it's a cost factor, yes, when you look at, operating responsibly for the taxpayers of the city, we're gonna get equal to or better service at 1/10 of the cost. And as a fire chief, I can speak to it, it's not our dispatcher's fault. They do a great job. They're limited in what they can provide us. They don't have scalability. And from a safety standpoint, that concerns me as a fire chief.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, appreciate that. Real quick here, I'm getting real close to my last statements, but I just want to hit on something that Mr. Kelch, when you brought up the cost and how can we maybe guarantee, if it's $5 now, what's going to keep it from escalating? And the answer is nothing. We're not going to keep that from escalating. But what I'm hearing is, and Mr. Bonzel, you can maybe help me with this. The guy that ran Hamilton County, I forget his name. He told us that Mr. Portune has committed to reduce the cost of safety services here in Hamilton County, and so this is, and so now basically we are being supplemented. There's something paying for this service that we're not taking advantage of. So we're not really talking about that. So what I'm getting is there is a commitment by our state legislators to keep safety service down at a low cost here in the next recent future.
Yeah, I just wanted, so it's actually, so Todd Fortune, he was a county commissioner for many, many years. He did pass away a couple of years ago, or I guess a year and a half ago. He prioritized, or actually it might have been even earlier this year, I'm sorry, I don't know the time, but he prioritized, trying to find a solution to the 911 funding. And so what happened was, basically the county raised their sales tax by 0.25 cents. I think it happened around the time that the Union Terminal sales tax expired, that was going for 5 years. And essentially they've dedicated that money to public safety, so to the coroner's office, to dispatch, to all these things. And he told us, so it was asked, I think a previous council member said, does the county's technology not update? Do they not need money for it? The difference is the county has a dedicated funding source that goes directly to that. And Andy Knapp told us, basically, whatever they needed from the county, from Jeffrey Aluto is the county administrator. That's it. He told the three of us and the fire chief was there that basically anything that was needed, that Jeffrey Aluto was extremely committed to funding, so that public safety is a huge priority for the county and for the dispatch center. So that technology is there, and if they need updates, they get it because it's funded through a sales tax that we are currently paying right now, right here in Norwood.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Mr. Drace, you had your hand up?
Before I get into my last little piece here, I want to say it's great that Todd Fortune, dedicated that money towards public safety. However, he's not here anymore. God rest his soul. Mr. Bronzel made that point for me. We have new commissioners. These new commissioners can do whatever they want with that money. They don't have to abide by a handshake of a commissioner who's no longer with us or even no longer on the commission.
Just let me respond to that, sir. There was another name you just said that he bring up. I didn't jot the name down, but the second name that you mentioned there, right?
The county administrator, Jeffrey.
There was some.
But the county administrator.
My apologies. So yeah.
The county administrator is under the direction of the county commissioners. The county commissioners are the ones that make the budget. They're the ones that come up with where the price points are going to be. Again, the administrator is just like our safety service director. Our safety service director goes under our budget. So if we say that we're pulling $1 million from the fire department because they're $1 million higher than the police department, and we're going to put $500,000 into the police department and cut them by $500,000 to try and even it out, that's what happens. My point here is, just because a commissioner a year ago, 2 years ago said this is what we're going to do, doesn't mean that those 3 commissioners now who are brand new are going to stand by that. And I was going to save this until the very last end and the point, but if you have a bread shop and you're the only bread shop in the county, in the town, you can charge whatever you want for that bread, essentially. I mean, there's no argument with that. If I'm the only one in town, I will charge whatever I want for it. And none of the cities really have any say to that. They don't.
I can respond to that.
The chief wanted to respond to that
I
too.
got something comes to mind too.
In regards to the costing of dispatch, I mean, if you look at the historical basis, it's been going down over the last 3 to 4 years. On top of that, there is, to the bread shop comment, there is a board of advisors that does have some control over what happens in terms of cost basis within county dispatch. To say that we're going to charge whatever they want, I think it's bad practice. I think it's warranted in terms of that you can say, hey, they have the ability to change rates. Absolutely, that's true. Are they going to do it willy-nilly? Past practice of the last 5 years that Andy Knapp's been there? Absolutely not. The Board of Advisors rings true. The city of Norwood actually have a pretty good shot of sitting on that after 1 year.
Mr. Thompson.
I just want to point out to anybody listening that municipal governments are not in the profit-making business. You might want to raise your prices, but it's got to be justified by your costs. Now, I'm not saying their costs won't go up, but they're not going to be in there trying to make a profit on the municipalities that they serve. I don't have a law director here, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure that's illegal. It's just they're there. They're a nonprofit as a municipal government entity. They will charge what they have to. I understand the frustration, but this is, again, you came in with worst case scenario here that most likely won't happen, and an example of extreme profiteering that most likely won't happen. I can't say that it won't, but it's all extreme worst case scenario. And it's hard to make informed decisions when we're dealing in extreme whataboutism, which is what, unfortunately, though I think you probably have good points to make, you come across as saying, and it's unfortunate. I personally have heard enough. I think we've hashed over this all. If anybody else has anything left to say.
Well, I mean,
Chief Kramer had a comment.
Just to piggyback on what Chief McCabe said, the county getting Norwood, they can raise their prices right now because everybody that's with them, there's nowhere for them to jump ship to. We're not going to take them. Cincinnati's not going to take them. So they can do whatever they want with their prices right now. We're not going to make a difference to them.
Thank you, Chief Kramer. Thank you, Mr.
I
Thompson.
don't have anything more to say.
the only last thing I have is, since everybody's on this financial kick, it's going to save us $750,000. Let's look at those numbers. What numbers have we received from the mayor or from the auditor that are firm line by line? We've just gotten a round number, okay? I went through and I calculated up. Okay, I dropped my numbers significantly. I know the last meeting I said 21, okay? 21 clerks. And that was all part-time, trying to cut the benefits out type deal. So now I've gone down to 6 full-time clerks. If we're looking at utilizing our union members for those spots, we're going to have to pay them somewhere around what they're making now. Well, so with benefits, with pay, you're looking at an average of $75,000 per person. With benefits, with pay, the whole gamut. Times 6, you're looking at $450,000. Now, 3 people for 311, you're going to pay them somewhere around $60,000 each to work that 311 again, because it could possibly be some of our dispatch personnel, maybe the lower end of them. 60 times 3, that's 180,000. 150,000 to Hamilton County Communications. 2 secretaries at about 45,000 piece each. You're looking at 90. And then the lease until 2023 on the equipment we have, which is $22,000. And I got that from the 2018 meeting that was brought up of how much the lease was going to cost for 5 years, I believe. So we'll have to pay those for an additional 3 years. That brings us to $66,000. My number on those, this all came from Excel, the equals, you know, I did that. Comes to $936,000 total. Our current dispatch budget this year, I believe, is right around $838,000. So if we use that number, we're at negative $97,000 as a savings. So we're actually losing money at that point. Now, let's be generous and we'll go up to 1.2 million, like what it was requested, and I believe the savings was $264,000. So if we go to the 1.2 million, it's $264,000 in savings off that $936,000. If we use the 1 million figure and cut out that 200,000, you're looking at a $64,000 savings. So if we're looking at money, I've run the numbers here to create a 24-hour clerk system with full-time employees, a 311 system, secretaries that were being requested, our lease equipment, and our pay to Hamilton County Communications for a contract. That comes out to more than what our dispatcher budget is right now. And even if we go up to that $1 million, again, we've seen the 1.2 is a wish list.
Mr. Donato.
957 was 2019. By the way, before I start, this is nothing to do with safety or anything with the chiefs, so I don't have a question for them. If someone else did, they can ask. So 1.05 is the number that I'm using, not 800. And 957 was the 2019 number that you asked for. So either one, I think that 1.05 is the better number, but even at 957, I'll do this math.
You said 1.05?
Yes. Minus 390, minus 180, minus 150, minus 45 because there was only one addition clerk, not the 90 that you talked about, and minus 22, which I don't think is appropriate because of the comment Mr. Bunzel said last time, but I'll include it also. That's reduction of 787. So the losing money, I don't understand that.
I don't think you're adding in the E11 stuff and the...
I am. I included 390, 180, 150.
But
Say it again if you want.
okay. 6 clerks, because that's what you'll need for 24/7.
I don't know where that's from, but I'll even use it.
The
Go.
problem is that we're not looking at our needs. Our needs. What are our needs? Now, I've been told to bring up numbers. These are my numbers of needs.
Keep going.
So 6 clerks, 450,000. 3 311 people, personnel, 180,000. Hamilton County call center, 150,000. Secretaries, 90,000. And our lease, which was brought up 2 years ago at $22,000 for the equipment we currently have.
Yeah, I think what he's trying to say, just this is my perspective on it, is, yeah, we're gonna
Gross versus net.
instantly, that budget from dispatch will disappear. Boom.
Yeah.
It's gone. but there's things replacing it, and these are the things that are gonna be essentially replacing it with that money that we were gonna save in that or that gross savings, and then adding in these things to make these things possible instead, leave us with a net savings of very little.
I think it was an appropriate comment that you made last time when you said $45, $42. That's not what's going to be the net savings. You said that last time, and I think that was a really valid statement. I do. It would help, I think, council if, and I'll ask it in an email to you guys, it would help if Jim or Mr. Mayor, if you could help a little bit of the assumptions that he was using. If someone else could provide kind of what that would look like, or what we think where the 750 comes from. Because I think it's probably less than 750. I come up with something like 323, and that's using the clerks that Mr. Dracy assumes, which I think is high, and includes sunk costs, which I think is inappropriate to use. But that's still 323,000 savings. So somewhere between it's going to be cost prohibitive to 750,000 is an answer. And I did ask you for something, so if you have it, I'll get to it in a second. But I want to make a quick point. I believe that there's going to be savings. I believe that costs on our end have risen 12%, 10%, 6%, and 15% over the year. It's going in this direction. I believe that Hamilton County has demonstrated it's going in this direction. So even if, I wish I could do that, even if Hamilton County goes up, okay, we are too. So either we're trending in the same way, or right now the fact is we're going in the opposite direction. So it's difficult for me to consider money in this because the V's are just so far apart. I made that comment last time, Mr. Dracy, I think you misinterpreted it because you said some council members want to table the money conversation. And I think you're referring to me because I'm the one who said we should table it. And I think that got misconstrued because I wanted to focus on the safety, which I thought you were doing a really good job diving into. And I wanted to have that part of the conversation because it was a worrying thing for a lot of our residents. But if we're going to make this about money, it feels so dumb to me because they're so far apart. And I know that sounds a little dramatic, but that's how I feel.
And I'm not trying to make it about money. However, Councilman Braden continues to bring up the fact that, well, my constituents, I'm going to save them money. That's what my constituents want.
And I'm sorry, okay, maybe I'm misinterpreting.
That's the whole reason, is because I'm trying to explain to him.
I'm agreeing with him. So again, you said it's not about, I'm saying it too. So I'm not saying because of Braden, I'm saying I believe that they're trending in the opposite direction. And I believe even if they weren't, we'd still be saving money. How much is somewhere between hundreds of thousands to almost $1 million. But it's still more than 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And it goes up to a pretty high number where we start to lose the degree of confidence. That was my point.
I understand that. I'm trying to get out the fact that we are not saving as much as we think we are.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
And I would say, if I could, real quick, is I would fully agree with you on that savings part if we weren't doing the E911 thing, secretaries, these clerks, all those things. Because that money comes from somewhere. So by us taking that, you're using $1 million budget, which Lieutenant Rankin was saying tonight, but don't even think it's going to be that high.
No, he said 950, sorry, man, he just said 957 is 2019. It's going to be something just a little bit close to that. So that's the million that he's talking about, not 853. We've been going up.
The administration, Mr. Sidden, they were here talking about the 1.2, and I think it was kind of on purpose, because they know the difference between, a budget request and what they actually get. I think that was kind of a tactic to kind of, say, hey, we're saving a lot of money. But this money is going to come from somewhere that we're going to be using to spend, or to get all these other things in place of dispatch, even 911, the clerks, secretaries. It's going to add up. There are costs there. So by saying there's $1 million savings, we're taking 150 off the rip for ACCC. So if we're using $1 million, all right, that's 750,000 left. And then if these numbers are high, then that's great. These projections that Mr. Dracy gave, that's great if they're high, because then there is that possibility for 200,000 to 300,000 savings a year. But I'm not sure that they are going to be, because again, I don't have those numbers, and like I was asking McCabe and that for the numbers on the cost per runs and that, which he did a good job explaining that. I've not seen numbers, I don't think anybody here has seen the numbers of what it will actually cost as far as how much this clerk is probably gonna get paid, how much is gonna be healthcare, how much the secretary is gonna be paid, are they gonna be classified hourly, or they're gonna be union employees too. There is going to be a cost in this replacement. All right, and we're also going to have that lease on the equipment and things that stick around for a couple of years. I think the V you're showing, or you're saying, kind of is, I mean, I get your use of it, but it's almost manufactured, not trend. It's like manufactured by that tax that they're able to use right now, where for us, the trend is maybe going up a little bit every year, where they got that influx of money to where they're able to manufacture a downswing on their costs, which that could go anytime, I feel like. I mean, yeah, it would be somebody's desire to, you know, take that away or use that money somewhere else, but as we know, and we appropriate funds, that happens. So I think to just hold on to that and fight for that and say, see, look, savings, I don't think it's very responsible either. I think it's a temporary at best savings. So the estimates I'm kind of getting is coming around $100,000 to $250,000 savings a year, which, you know, isn't the $1 million, but it is still savings for the city. And even if we see that double, that $5 per run go to 10, which is still significantly less than, I guess, what we're spending and what Hamilton County was charging, we're still going to see that go to now $300,000 instead of $150,000. That, some of that buffers and that net savings is now gone to the fact of where we're kind of now back spending per year because we replaced some of those gross savings with new expenditures in replace of, to where now we're spending just as much, if not maybe more, than what we did having our own dispatch. Now we have a couple more clerks, some secretaries in the E11 center, but, and I don't think in the long run that is going to be as beneficial to the city of Norwood than having our local dispatch unit.
Mr. DiNardo.
I actually would just be repeating myself, so I'm sorry.
Sucks.
Mr. Braden.
Can we ask?
I tell a lie. I did ask you a question, and I didn't give you a chance to answer it. I'm sorry for that.
Thank you, Mr. DiNardo. In the very beginning of this, there was a spreadsheet that every council member got, and not the beginning of this meeting, a couple weeks ago, a month ago. This spreadsheet outlined all of the savings that were potentially coming to the city. And what it basically said was the 2019 total cost per the auditor's report, 2019 was $961,000, $854.02, down to the penny, 02. It said that the budget request was for $1 million for 2021. So this is 19 actual, because we haven't finished 20, but 19 actual, $961,854.02. You don't even have to write these things down because you guys all got this information. So you can pull this thing and look at it. It also said the budget request was $1.2 million. And I understand that's a wish list and there's some extra stuff in there. But it outlines everything in here. Personal service section, $959,000. Finance contract for the 911 equipment, $30,000. Enhanced 911 software, 11th. I can go down and read every one of these. There's like 25 different items and it gives specific numbers. In the next column that was provided to every council member, John Braden, this was given to you. This is the reasoning why I went down this route in the first place, is because I said, oh my gosh, this is a change that could make a drastic change to the way we do business here. What happened was in 2021, this sheet said in 2021, if we make this change, we'll spend $644,195. And that was based on the numbers that you all received. So the difference is between spending in 2021 $1,200,000, we are going to spend $644,195. That's in 2021. That's all on this sheet. It also says in 2022, we'll be able to reduce our costs down to $367,000 $397,000, So that's a huge savings over 2 years' time. And the only reason I look at this number that closely is I said, oh my gosh, think of the infrastructure improvements we can make. Think of the streets we could do over a 5-year. So savings in 1 year, $555,000, $500,000. I don't sneeze at $200,000, but $500,000 in savings that we can come in. Then I said, okay, in 2 years, we'll save $837,000 that we can put towards streets, we can put towards parks, we could put towards a community center, we could put towards all the things that make a community great. Those are the reasons, that's the reason why you guys got this up front, to understand that. The Norwood 311 stuff, and I talked about it at the very beginning. The vision, to empower the community members to communicate with their government, to receive accurate answers quickly and easily, and have confidence that their needs are being addressed and voices are being heard. I said in previous meetings, that's the reason why we're trying to make this change. That's another part of what we're trying to do. I recognize there was a problem, a real problem with communication, with getting what the community members want from their local government. It was a problem through the whole campaign. They said, nobody talks to us. We don't know who to contact. We're not sure how to use our government. And that's one of the reasons why I got involved with this part of it too. So I also, in this packet of information that you guys received, which was the overview and view of the 311, it said there would be 2 clerks that are put into the 311 system. 2. They're called service administrators, 2 clerks. 5 days per week. They'll operate, it'll be open from 7 o'clock until 8 p.m. Those are the 2 clerks that are in there. So that was pretty simple. I figured that was pretty easy to put together there. We have a clerk, we already have a police clerk, we already have 1 police clerk, and I said we're going to add another police clerk. That's 1 additional police clerk to the police department. This is not based upon me saying, well, I know exactly what the dispatchers in the communication center do. This is me listening to the chief of police. Chief of police is saying, I've got an underutilized clerk that's there right now, and we're going to have to add another one, and I want your flexibility. I want you, if I come back to you next year and say, hey, we need to add a clerk to this or something, we're going to look at that. So, okay, you're running that operation. I'll work with you on that stuff. We also talked about the secretary. We have 1 secretary that is shared between the 2 chiefs. And they said, we need more administrative support. I said, okay, we'll get another full-time secretary, which is a union position that's there right now. I said, we'll get that other person. So we are adding 1 secretary who would be added to the fire station to take care of that. So what we are looking at is 4 people, right? 4 people that we're putting on there. Not 3 people, not 6 people. I don't know where all these numbers, I guess Mr. Geraci, out of his wisdom of knowing all this, how the city of Norwood works, he's never worked for the city of Norwood, but he's got more information than the chiefs who have worked there for years, and that's what he's imparting upon. And I just don't understand where some of the numbers are coming from. So it is a matter of upgrading, it's a matter of upgrading our communication system. It's a matter of the chiefs, both the chiefs coming to me saying, we can do it better, we can do it cheaper, we can have more resources, and that's why I'm moving this direction, because the chiefs have brought me this information. So all this is right here. If you guys want me to put together a spreadsheet that shows you exactly how much it costs for 1 secretary, and for 1 more clerk, and for 2 service administrators, and you want to compare that to running 16 employees in dispatch, I'll put those numbers together and send them to you. It won't take me that long to put that stuff together.
You're wondering safety.
Mr. Mayor, I would.
Mr. Kelly.
I don't know if that answered your question, Mr. DiNardo, but I mean, I've said all along, and I think it's been said many times here, we've got great people that work on our dispatch center. They provide a good level of service to us right now. If we can make positive changes that are better for the city of Norwood, we should make those changes. And we can't think of these changes and say, you know, we've always done it this way. We've done it this way for 20 years since we had 30,000 people living here. Why don't we continue down that route? The chiefs are saying this is a change that we need to make. And as the mayor, I support them wholeheartedly, and I'll try to go down that route. Absolutely. with all this discussion, I think it's still the right choice for the city of Norwood.
Thank you, Mayor Schneider. Mr. Kelch?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I would appreciate that kind of information. I did see your sheet you were talking about. I just found it lacking numbers and knowledge that would be important, like the E11 stuff, what your plan is. Because it's not just, and I do kind of think, well, we're not saving all this money to go do roads now, because I don't have the numbers to know, so all we can do is look at this and kind of analyze and guess and try to conservatively estimate. I want to add again, on my behalf, is having that information would be very beneficial for us, the residents, everybody to see exactly what's going on in this decision. There is money being replaced that's being saved, and to know exactly what that's going to look like and what our actual net savings will be from this, I think would be huge. So I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Kelch.
Thank you.
Is there anything else this evening? Anyone else? Thank you very much. We're adjourned.